the American Adversaries, if you can take it.
All right, welcome back to the show, folks. We certainly appreciate you being out there. 407-774-8255 is the number. I am Christopher Hart. David Levitt's on his way to the Patio Grill, so if you'd like to strike up a conversation with David and the other folks out there, you can head on out there now. Of course, the Patio Grill is in the south side of Sanford, where 1792 and the 417 intersect. It's a great restaurant, so if you have the opportunity, please head on over there and say hey to David. We're going to get John Stemberger on the line here in just a minute. We're going to be talking about the Supreme Court, the pending decision. We have a big pending decision having to do with same-sex marriage and some goings-on in our own capital of Tallahassee having to do with some bills that were passed and sent to the governors for his signature, an adoption bill and a waiting bill for abortions. And also, I don't know if you knew this or not, but John is the founder of Trail Life USA, the honest-to-God alternative to the Boy Scouts. And after what former Secretary Bob Gates had to say recently concerning the Boy Scouts and gay Scoutmasters, you might want to think of Trail Life if you have a youngster that you'd like to get into that sort of program. And we'll even talk a little presidential politics with John as well. And, of course, John is founder of the Florida Family Action. You can find them at floridafamilyaction.org, and you can sign up there, and they will send you great action alerts, like I'm holding one here in my hands, the action alert to protect faith-based adoption and foster care agencies. Ask Governor Rick Scott to veto HB 7013. It's got all the information you need to know. It's got the phone number and email address and even the snail mail address for the governor. So this is the type of thing that you'll get if you sign up at floridafamilyaction.org. And so as soon as we get John on the line, we'll have a conversation with him, and we'll probably take it on into the next hour as well. So if you have any questions for John, here's the opportunity to ask him at 407-774-8255. He's one of the guys that the Orlando Sentinel likes to vilify because he goes out there and he fights for Christianity and rights for those of us who seem to don't have anybody speaking for us these days. So speaking of John Stemberger, I've got him on the line right now. So without any further ado, John, thanks for being on the show. We appreciate it.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I just want to thank you up front, too, for all the great work you do. I mean, it's hard work. It's the Lord's work, but it's hard work going up there and trying to talk sense into people. It's like my dad used to say when he'd lecture me. It's like trying to talk sense into a brick wall. I know sometimes you might feel like you need to beat your head up against a brick wall.
Yep, that's the way it feels like. But, we do it because it's the right thing to do, and we just want to be faithful to the end. So.
Well, I know you got a great organization, and I know you guys do a lot of hard work, and you get results. That's the bottom line, is that you get results. You win cases in court, and you win public opinion. You win those fights. So it's very important what you do. Let's start with the big fight going on in Washington, D.C. Obviously, the Supreme Court's already made their decision. They're just writing the opinions now. With the same-sex marriage thing. Let's assume for a minute that they say, okay, yeah, all the states have to accommodate same-sex marriage. What would that mean to churches, for instance, who would refuse or not want to do that?
Well, it depends on how they said it. What the court did was very unique. They didn't accept the issue on appeal from the lower court. They said, we're going to split this issue into two separate issues. First, does a state have to require same-sex marriages? And then secondly, does the state have to recognize marriages from a foreign jurisdiction? I think they did this because Anthony Kennedy, who's the swing vote, is clearly a states' rights guy. In every case, including the last same-sex marriage case, Windsor, and in other cases, he's arguing very strongly for states' rights. But he's also very pro-gay rights in his rhetoric. And so I think it's very possible the court could say, look, states do not have to recognize same-sex marriage, meaning that our marriage amendment is actually enforceable, but you got to recognize marriages from other jurisdictions, blah, blah, blah. So the exception swallows up the rule, and he gets it both ways. That's a very possible outcome. If they find that there's a fundamental right under the 14th Amendment of the Equal Protection Clause, some fundamental right to marry all of a sudden, that would have radical implications to churches and religious groups, schools, nonprofits, and in fact, even in the oral argument, the Attorney General was asked this question by Scalia, and he granted. He said, yes, that is going to be an issue for nonprofit organizations like colleges, like churches and others. So this is a major encroachment upon religious liberty, upon the founding principles which our country were based, which men and women died and literally gave their lives, as if we're acting as if that's no big deal now, and all of a sudden this concept of erotic liberty is being trumping core First Amendment rights. But it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the Supreme Court in the weeks to come.
It is. I studied a little bit of constitutional law when I was in college, and it seemed to me that more often than not, the Supreme Court kind of what I call splits the baby. They give one side a little bit, they give the other side a little bit. So I'm hopeful that, to be honest with you, in this case, that's what they'll do. I mean, that seems to be the least amount of damage, which, as you said, we would still be able to enforce our marriage amendment, but we would also have to honor marriages that were performed, say, in another state or another country.
I think that's right, because, look, I mean, if they decide that there's a fundamental right to marriage, and under the Supremacy Clause, that trumps 38 state marriage amendments, where literally millions of Americans, like in an act of direct democracy, codified this in their state constitution, I think they would risk enormous institutional legitimacy by overturning those millions of Americans' votes. And so I think that's a likely outcome, but you never know. These guys are pretty radical. It could very well be they want to do their social change and force it upon the rest of the country, and we may end up with the Roe versus Wade of marriage in this court's decision in a couple of weeks here.
So you do think that Justice Kennedy will be the swing vote in this? You think it'll be a 5-4 decision?
Absolutely. It's very clear from the Windsor case where everybody else stands on this. And it's Kennedy that could go either way on it, because he's kind of stuck on the states' rights principle, and well, he should be, but he's also seems to be committed to this gay rights agenda in the way that he talks.
Now, in Alabama, the Supreme Court Chief Justice there has said he will not honor such a decision. What recourse would he have, though, John?
Well, if you really want to get serious about the Constitution, we have this thing called a federal government, and the courts are supposed to be really the weakest branches. If you read the Federalist Papers, I mean, they were never designed to be self-empowered like they are now.
Yeah, the
most powerful branch of government.
I think the first Chief Justice, John Marshall, kind of codified that in a decision.
Yep, that's right. And so, look, we knew that Dred Scott was a wrong decision when they said blacks were not persons under the Constitution.
Right.
We knew Plessy versus Ferguson was wrong when they said blacks are separate but equal.
Yep.
And we knew that Roe versus Wade was wrong. So, irrespective of what the court does, this is not the final word. Marriage is an institution which predates, everything we know. It's the fundamental building block of any civilization. You can't build a civilized society without having a way to organize human beings and socialize children. Marriage is the way we do that, and to have it crumble, you know what the result is? It's what we saw in Maryland, just in downtown Baltimore. I mean, that's the result of the absence of marriage and family structures.
Right.
It's literally chaos, and we're headed that way with each passing day as marriage is just being devalued, family is ignored, and the government is stepping in as a substitute for marriages and families and trying to just, with a paycheck, make it all go away, and it's just not going to work.
It's occurred to me that this is sort of a subtle movement into a socialist world, even toward more, it's huge steps towards communism, if you will, where, the family is the state, right?
Well, that's right, and I think that we're seeing more and more that where do we get our phones and where do we get our food from and our community college education? It's from Obama. It's from the state. We're looking to the state for more and more things, and it's a very dangerous recipe for disaster, not to mention the political consequences. You build in a perverse political relationship with people that have no incentive to work and are just on the dole, and it's a very sad thing where these folks are, just kind of coasting, and really there's no incentive for them to. Why should you work when you're being given all these things?
It's the most detrimental thing you can do to a human spirit or human soul is to just give them things. Because you mentioned Baltimore. Let's look at Texas. That suburb just outside of Dallas with those kids just going wild, and we hear reports of students in school attacking teachers and then being excused for it because they were a minority or something. We are just sending all the wrong messages to our youth more than anything else, aren't we, John?
That's exactly right. And so I think the payday is going to come here Because what we're doing is we're tampering with the ingredients of civilization. We're literally seeing the unraveling of social order at a very basic level. Because the most important form of government is not in Tallahassee, it's not in Washington, D.C., it's around the dinner table. That's where these little human beings called children learn how to have self-control, learn how to govern themselves. And when we can't govern ourselves as a society, guess what? The law is going to do that. It's going to be the expansion of the state. State-run, state-owned, state control, and the state begins to encroach in more and more of our lives when we don't self-govern ourselves.
Yeah.
And the left feeds on broken families and broken marriages. They're right there to further this perverse relationship where there's a handout and also a political motivation for that handout that comes with it.
Yeah, the word perverse is, I think, most apropos. It's a perverse world of liberalism where they try to make you into a victim so that they can rescue you from your victimhood.
Yep. That's well put.
Yeah. Hey, John, we're coming up on a break. When we come back from the break, I want to talk a little bit more about what's going on in Tallahassee. But real quickly, do you have any feelings about what the Supreme Court might do on the Obamacare ruling? I know this is a little bit off the wall, but do you have any feelings on that ruling coming out? Yeah,
that's a very nuanced thing. There's so many scenarios, it's hard to even predict what the courts might do because there's not a lot of precedent for it is like there is in the abortion or same-sex marriage cases. So I really don't have any prediction there. But we'll certainly find out soon enough.
Yeah, that was a roll of the dice. I fear, though, they're going to give him that one. That's my feeling I get in my bones, is they're going to let him have that one. They're going to say, oh, the intent was there, rather than, the actual verbiage. But anyway, John, please stay with us. When we come back, folks, we are talking with John Stemberger, Florida Family Action. Go to floridafamilyaction.org and sign up. And like I said, they'll send you these action alerts. They'll send you a lot of great information. You will be prepared when the next election comes around. You'll know who to vote for and why to vote for them, because you'll be told all about them and their positions. That's floridafamilyaction.org. We'll be right back.